It's been a long day without you, my friend, and I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. We've come a long way from where we began. Oh, I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. When I see you.
This week's episode of From is in memoriam of our favorite diner dasher, Tian Chen Liu. She came, she saw, she cooked. This week, we see the town grief-stricken from the aftermath of the devastating trap set by the creatures in what I believe is a hat trick to break Boyd by hurting his Fromville son Kenny, by killing his mom, and attempting to make a side play for Ethan. Hello everyone, I'm the Movie Guru. Thank you for checking out my review this week. We got a lot to talk about. Now, of course, if you want to hear some behind the scenes information, please check out my interview with Tian Chen Liu herself, Miss Elizabeth Moy, who talked about how she got the news of the fate of her character and how she came into playing it. This episode, we got a few answers on some lingering questions, which was who was Jim talking to on the phone, and what is going on with Fatima, and is she what I've been saying, a wendigo? And we also got the homegoing service for Tian Chen Liu. Now, as nice as this homegoing service was, the creatures completed 2 out of 3 things on their list, which was to break Boyd and hurt Kenny. And even though this was a terrible event that happened, the Fromville residents were able to band together and give a proper send-off to the beloved Tian Chen Liu. The death of Tian Chen was monumental on the show, and its impact will be felt all season. Now, even though she's gone, I just like to say she still lives on in our hearts. They dressed Tian Chen up in her Sunday's best, and sadly, the news of hearing Tian passing sent Kenny on a kamikaze mission straight into the lion's den. Now, luckily, Boyd was able to talk him out of this, but I'm sure the entity heard this, and I fear that he may move Kenny up on the list of residents they want to target next.
Oh my God! They've killed Kenny! You bastards!
Now, the homegoing service was organized and conducted with the utmost respect, and it really showed how important Tian Chen was to everyone there. She will be missed. Also, I do want to say this doesn't make Jim look less suspicious to me. If you guys follow my channel and hear my reviews, I believe that Jim is somehow involved in this and is some sort of villain, especially now seeing what happened to Tian Chen Liu, Kenny's mom, for Jim to sort of put that bait out here that he's going out of town, and that made Kenny kind of self-volunteer himself the same night that his mother was targeted and killed. I mean, what are the chances? I mean, we did hear that Kenny wanted to turn back, and he was kind of like, no, we have to stay out here. But either way, rest in pieces, Tian Chen Liu. I do believe that if Abby was right, we may see her again in the form of a flashback or in the real world if Kenny makes it out. Some people did say they did not like the acting, but they said the story was top tier. I thought they both were great, especially the performances from Kenny and Harold. They're always great together. Some of the other information we got was who was Jim talking to on the phone. We finally got to hear the voice, and what a surprise. It was the dead son, Thomas. Now, a lot of people are thinking, like, how is that possible? How could that actually have been done? Well, it really wasn't Thomas, right? We know it was the creatures basically projecting Jim's fears, right? His nightmares, right? His guilt, because that was what was released in the behind the scenes clip from John Griffin, that these characters will have to face their own demons. And what other demon does he walk around with than that, feeling the guilt from being the one that was with Thomas, to going to get the phone, to the baby falling off the table. Now, I do believe that could have been the entity, the creature, the boy away, calling him, distracted him, and caused the baby to fall off. And also, I'm starting to see a connection with the water here, and I had a couple questions about that, so I'll get into that later in my next section. In the next scene, we get the long-anticipated follow-up to try to find out what's going on with Fatima, and is she healthy? Is she sick? Well, we get a surprise here where we find out she hasn't been eating. They go see Christy, but end up seeing Mari and needs to eat. And she gave her some sort of medicine. She goes back, but she doesn't go in. Instead, she goes on the porch and helps herself to the rotten food buffet. And I mean, it's crazy, right? And because I told you guys a week ago that she was turning into something, and of course we didn't know what until we know. But the first sign of something off was her telling Ellis her stomach didn't feel right. You know, first it did look like she just had morning sickness, but then it turned into this premeditated food fraud. I mean, the woman was on the porch committing regicide, you know, eating raw spoiled beets behind Ellis' backs. You know, that's definitely some treacherous stuff, and I don't want to hear any more stuff that's just a pregnancy craving, you know. And in order to prove my theory, I used the almighty Google. Here's what it said. Everything about that scene, her on the porch eating that food, was creepy. You know, first she goes in the corner, then the music changes to some type of John Carpenter's thing and all that stuff. Now, in season 2, Christy, who was only a third-year medical student, gave Fatima the news that she was pregnant. Now, I understand it's a simple test and a simple reading, but here's either 3 things that happened. 1, Christy didn't correctly assess this, right? That is a possibility. 2, Fatima has an illness that can cause increased levels of HCG, I believe, which indicates pregnancies on the test. Or 3, she's not pregnant and she's turning into a creature. You know, if something like that causes increased HGC levels, it could be an imbalance in the pituitary gland, which could also lead to psychosis, which will also get into one of the things I'm going to talk about later. I also think that we're going to see a decision have to be made on Fatima's behalf. I do believe that the baby will come out some sort of basket case, if you guys are familiar, and Ellis will have to make a decision whether to save Fatima or save the baby, which is pretty much the same thing his father had to do when it came to Abby and him. So I definitely see that coming full circle, but we'll have to see what happens later. Now, in the next clip, we get to see what I think is the main storyline here, Tabitha, where she looks in the lunchbox and finds out Victor's home address. She goes to the home address, and here is where the story starts to get interesting. 1597 is the house address, and thanks to the great people on Facebook from groups, that is a Fibonacci number. So that means like a circle or a knot list or something that's going to go in a circle. And I do believe that by her going here that she's going to end up back in Fromville somehow, and I would hope to help everybody, but we don't know. So the homeowner shows up, and it's the new cast member, Henry. And Henry's skeptical, and then it kind of ends, but when the episode comes back on episode 2, we find out that Tabitha sleep on the couch, and she says she passed out. Well, Henry says that Tabitha passed out, and it doesn't make any sense, right? So my question was, why does Tabitha keep passing out? So when the trailer for this season came out, we did show this character, and we didn't know his name at first, but his name is Henry. He's played by Robert Joy from CSI. And I think he's doing a phenomenal job this season acting. I mean, his narration on the basement scene was top tier. And so one of the things that we've been seeing is that they looked on a computer, and on the computer we saw an article where it said the search continues for the Matthews family. Now, this article where it covers a couple of things. So first, when I saw this, I was looking for a date because I haven't seen many things that are indications of time in Tabitha's storyline. But we see a time, 5:30 p.m., but not a date. And then we see him was written by someone named Ethan Clark. And we don't know who Ethan Clark is, but they're the author of this article. So also in that article in the lower right-hand corner was an advertisement for a moving company named Rendezvous Moves. Now, this was the same movie company that Doyd used when he moved. And if you look in Donna's room, there's a calendar that says Rendezvous Move. And so we're seeing some sort of connection with some of the Easter eggs that lets us know that this stuff is really intentional. So the article that was written for the Desert Star Chronicle, written by Ethan Clark, the full article is out, and it says, Glendale, Arizona. Search efforts continue this Monday following the disappearance of a family of 4 traveling through the state. The Matthews family, Jim Kim and Tabitha, both in their mid-30s, and their two children, Julie and Ethan, younger child, have been missing since around February 20th. The family was last heard from while traveling through a rented RV. While authorities currently do not suspect foul play, they are urging the public to remain vigilant. People traveling across the state being asked to keep an eye out for the RV or any of the four family members. It says friends of the Matthews family report they were headed towards Yellowstone National Park. Their last contact was via text message, but they have since been unreachable. Search teams have been combining popular camp areas and the last known location in the well-known tourist destination. Arizona wilderness officials have warned that the frequent occurrence of flash floodings is a risk in remote areas. These floods often claim lives each year, particularly these camping overnight isolated regions. Arizona ranks fourth in the nation for the highest number of missing person cases, with over 9,000 reported last year. If you have any information about the case or any missing persons, please contact your local authorities. So nothing we didn't know. It just confirmed where they were going, because it was kind of up in the air for me whether they were going to Colorado to visit family or if they were indeed going on a camping trip. But I had heard originally they were going to a camping trip. And so I talked a little bit about Arizona, and I don't know why that was relevant, but it seems like it's adding to their story for some reason. Like, so we're going to figure out something else. But I'm glad they said that foul play was not suspect, because right there, if they had named Jim, I mean, my theory about him being a villain would have been right. So then we get the huge bomb that I kind of figured, and a lot of people were talking about, where Henry takes Tabitha to the basement and he starts explaining that him and Miranda were taking acid, and then Miranda started having visions, and what happened is she started drawing everything that she saw, saying that she was some sort of chosen person, that she had to free these children. He said that it sounded like a real crazy person, but given the circumstance, the viewpoint from us, the audience, we kind of know it's not. I actually have been thinking that this could be an LSD experiment, and that has actually been an early season 1 theory, especially when you see people drinking the water. They technically don't know what's in this water. So about 2 years ago, one of my early theories was that what if LSD was in the food and it's all visions? What if the entire townspeople are actually dreaming from drugs, LSD, acid, and the magic, sort of similar to the men who stare at goats? And so we don't know where the food is coming from, but somehow everybody's eating and drinking good. Jim and Ethan went to the diner. Ethan said he wanted pancakes. Even his father was shocked. We did find out that the monsters are controlling the electricity through the ground, and does that mean they can also control the food and how it affects their bodies? There has been stories in real life about military operations. So water from the faucets, no well, it could be spiked. Canned peaches spiked, and also other food sources spiked. So the whole thing could be an LSD trip, and the monsters could be the military experiments unleashed on the village every night. And how crazy was it for Father Khatri to run out in the streets and stop Boyd's car out of nowhere? And so a lot of things on the show happen through flashbacks, solo visions off camera that are not real, and the reality of the show is them living a normal life in this rundown town and hiding every night. All the bad things that could explain or done by other people, like Sarah did. Why did she be the only person hearing voices? And why have we to assume other people just outside the town are being controlled and doing what the voices in the head are doing? This could not even really work. The monsters could just be acting like they're keeping them out. Usually the runes work. The monsters feel some sort of pain from them being close and around, how like kryptonite affects Superman. But this is just a theory. And so, like I said, that was one of my early theories. I really was kind of, no logic was working. Nothing was making sense, but they've got this food, so somebody's supplying it, and it is a way to, spike the people and have them going through what we would call delusional parasitosis. So that was one of my theories. And so now that he said that, it makes sense. So everybody's having visions. They have to be on acid now because they introduced this part into the story. So everybody in the town had to one time be on some sort of drugs or acid, including Julie, who we know now has been smoking. Also, the rest of the family through the food and water. So when Henry took her into the basement, he showed her all the LSD paintings that Miranda started drawing. And we saw pretty much one-for-one copies of stuff that Tabitha saw, stuff that Jade has saw, and possibly some answers to some other things. We saw some people that we really don't know, some figures, some shadows. We saw the cave. We saw Tian Chen's house. We saw the bottle tree. We saw the different houses. We saw, the caves, the cells in the caves. We saw, this pilgrim character that keeps reoccurring. And so a lot of things were things that we might not have seen on the show, but kind of seen in other drawings. Here was an interpretation of the lighthouse, and it's almost like she saw them but didn't see them in real life, so some of the accuracy was off. Like with this talisman drawing, it was kind of something similar like a talisman, but not really. And then we even saw a really accurate drawing of the diner, and I can't really tell if you look in the middle, is that a person right there, a face, and then the door, and is that Tian Chen? And then we see, this, the church and the light beaming out of the windows, and then she looks and she sees this one picture, and who we've seen before, which is listed in the From intro, and it is pretty much, we didn't know if it was a man in white surrounded by a couple trees, but come to find out, I think this is a drawing of the boy in white. And I think that, this is basically saying that Miranda saw the boy in white, and he was a central figure in everything that was going on from her interpretation. We also saw some creepy pictures of some tall, dark figures in, I can't tell if that's an alleyway. This looks to be a picture of the root cellar. This looks to be, I can't tell if it's two faces or one face was screaming, and then we see this man in this yellow suit, and then we also see the Civil War soldiers. So a lot of it is coming full circle from things we've seen in other visions that other people have had that sort of connect and let us know that it's real. If you want to know more about what I think about the time traveling, check out my other video on my page about Tabitha's time machine and how it all relates. Now, I do want to point out that it could translate to why there's all those dates on the steps of the lighthouse. That means that was all the other people that have been chosen to free the children, and each time they went up, they wrote the date that they were there, and they just weren't able to free the children from what Henry said. And so now we know that Tabitha has been chosen because she's having the visions, and that she is the next one to pretty much get the furthest when it comes to freeing the children. Now, I also want to point out that it's a possibility that Jade was also chosen because, remember, he saw the children when he went into the caves. So we still have a lot of interpretation to go as far as who's going to be what. And this might have been the writers not really sure what direction they were going to go at one point, and kind of wrote themselves towards Tabitha and kind of let the story unfold. But maybe at one time we're going to write Jade into the lead, because it's possible that other people can carry this show and they can have different storylines. So we don't know, but it seems like Jade has his own storyline now, Boyd has his own storyline, and Tabitha has her own storyline. So after the funeral, the episode pretty much ended with Boyd talking to Ellis and him saying that he needs Ellis' help because they're going to try to catch one of these things. And so really exciting news. So I think that now we're going to cross over to Boyd trying to get his lick back, and I think that he is going to try to use what they have, specifically the talisman, to try to trick one of them. Now, I do want to point out that when Boyd went into the barn with the barn animals, he did bring a talisman, and for some reason he put it on the door, but everybody was sort of asking this question online, like, how come it didn't work? I think it didn't work because there was another way out. Like, usually barns are connected to the pens outside, and so they just have a big opening. And when you bring the animals into the barn, they put them in pens inside the barn that are locked. So the creatures could come in from the pen area, which is the outside, and so him just putting it by the door, it was still an opening in the rear. So I think that's why it wasn't able to lock them inside, because other words, it would theoretically. So I think he's going to find a more secure location, put the talisman up, and lock them in. Now, we also have to figure out, what is going on with the rest of the stuff in the show, specifically the red rocks that Jade found. What does Victor know? And also, what's going to happen with Randall? We saw in the trailer that he kind of burnt up. For what I thought burnt up, but we saw him on the ground rolling. I thought that he probably tried to throw a Molotov cocktail and burn himself up. We also have to find out what goes on with Christy, and is she the one that gets her leg caught? So I know that was a lot. I hope you guys enjoyed this review. I think this was a great episode for pushing the story together. Now I think the next episode will continue, and we'll have a lot more answers from what went on. Now I do want to point out the what the F moment on this week's episode, because when I go back to watching it and seeing Jim and Kenny in the Lost Village and they find the vegetables, they were by a lake. They were by a lake, and they were acting like it was not more important than the food, where they could have literally just got on a boat and got out of there. And so I'm blown away happy that they found the food, but blown away that they didn't make more notice of the lake and make more notice about how that could get them out of there. And the only other thing I could think about that was it must be a round lake, right? They must be able to see the other side. It must not be a stream, but the water looked running. So I don't know. So I hope we hear more about the lake, and I hope that at some point of the show they use that to get out of Fromville. So as always, guys, I am the movie guru, and I hope that you enjoyed this week's breakdown of From Season 3, Episode 2. And of course, I would love to discuss with you of all what you thought of the episode and all your theories in the comments below. And of course, I'll catch you guys on the next review on next week's episode. Make sure you guys follow my Twitter page and my Facebook page. I've been posting a lot there. Thanks to all the Facebook group that's been doing their due diligence and been finding the clues and searching backgrounds to help make this conversation easier and more entertaining. And of course, if you're looking for from merch, check out my merch from page. I'll put the link in the description below. So until next time, I'll see you guys later.